the folklore of vampires, like the ones from Vampire the Masquerade, is quite interesting to say the least. Born from the legend of Black Taps to the inception of Bram Stoker's Dracula and through Nosferatu as the first appearance of vampires in film, perhaps, to whatever the fuck play it is. The point is, maybe it's very telling that vampires do really rule the world from the shadows, but vampire folk is so prevalent in our culture, it's really hard to ignore in the horror genre. When Vampire the Masquerade came with its very first edition in the tabletop RPG in 1991 by the hand of White Wolf Publishing, it sure added a new frontier into the reputation of the vampire culture out there. Surely that reputation wouldn't be later tainted by cash grab mediocre games in the 2020s looking for a quick buck, right? Right? Allow me to introduce you to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt, possibly a stain and not precisely a blood one, but a shit one in the reputation of the Vampire the Masquerade license. You know, speaking of folklore, we all know this folklore of vampires that Vampire the Masquerade tries to subvert. Vampires sleep in coffins, hate garlic, get repelled by crucifixes, and then stick in a heart can yeet them out of existence, right? Well, there's another sort of folklore that Bloodhunt sadly reminds me of, at least in my country, Spain. There's this tale of the milkmaid, and the story of how the game's popularity and development comes to fruition is similar to that tale. It is a tale of a woman carrying a huge jug of milk she milked on one of her cows. I was about to say milk herself, but that implies some wrong pervy connotations here. Well, the point is, she goes off to sell all that milk to the local store. While on her way to deliver the milk, she starts daydreaming about she's not just gonna sell the milk itself, but also how subsequently she's gonna be able to make some more milk and sell it, and then start a whole business of milk and get rich, and maybe just build a milk jug space shuttle to fly around in it and float about in our mere poor people faces. But there is the important twist that easily delivers the moral of the story here. As she's carrying the milk and daydreaming so heavily she can't even land on Earth on her Bezos Goldic space rocket, she trips on a rock and falls down and crashes, spilling all the milk into the ground and spoiling it entirely, making all her aspirations crumble away with this reality. It comes down with an unsurprising moral of the story. Slow down when aspiring to big dreams, or also crash in reality and focus on your present. Because in the present, the most minimal mistake like the rock here can ruin your whole future. We can all see the effects of this tale's premise on the evolution of Bloodhunt. It started with a relative success amongst a very select kind of people. It had huge aspirations to be this fun game, and maybe some esports here and there, expanded content, but at the end of the day, the game's popularity slowly declines, and it looks like it's declining slightly faster every time. Maybe the feeling gamers had towards this game is the same feeling I got with this game. It was a toxic relationship of sorts, like that ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend you once had that you think you can give another chance because they can be nice sometime, but then reality strikes and they are a twat. Well, as much as I tried to enjoy this game, I simply can't. And that might be just my opinion about the game, except it's a general consensus of the people leaving the game in droves. How could it be possible when the game is fun on paper? Well, that's why the game is fun on paper. But there are some glaring problems around the game that the developers don't really bother to fix because they're perhaps too busy making it a battle pass cash grab. It's really weird how people in the Steam reviews praise it, because all I see is positive reviews that it's all Morbius memes, isn't it? Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's just autopsy this game before it even ends up being a dead on arrival. Sharkmob, the developers of Bloodhunt, was a company founded in 2017 by developers who previously worked on Tom Clancy's The Division and Hitman, which, I mean, at least that's what they say in the website written by someone who works at Sharkmob PR and marketing. Later on, Sharkmob was acquired by Tencent Games in 2019, and is now considered by a AAA game studio. There's one slight problem though, and maybe you can agree with me on this. There's only one game in their portfolio, which is Bloodhunt, and they are claiming they're working on 2 other games. Why will Tencent buy out a very young studio that, outside of their previous work on other studios like The Division and Hitman, they only got 1 game? It pretty much sounds like a suicide mission for Tencent unless there's really some hidden value in there that us mere thin blood could not see. It's also pretty ironic that they once claimed they were indie when they later have been acquired by Tencent. There's a whole interview going on before the release of Bloodhunt which reveals some red flags to the avid eye. They say, like I mentioned, that Bloodhunt is their first game.
And in general, this being our first game, it is also a great platform for us to start a service on, which is very key to this whole.
Yeah, a professional game studio who somehow cannot properly duck voice behind music on an interview. And they also tend to say that the game will have lots of verticality, with lots of transversal and vertical gameplay. Now, that's pretty big considering that judging for the gameplay footage, they are seriously trying to ape Apex Legends with the Vampire the Masquerade license. But I don't know, they could also expect to grow a player base that's big enough to guarantee anything.
And start bringing everyone in and see what they like, what they don't like. And
keep that milk jug straight, buddy. By the way, as a quick side note, taking up the guy next to David, Martin Ahlberg. He's the co-founder of Sharkmob, and previously worked at first as a military administrator in Sweden, then at Ubisoft as a marketing guy, and then at Massive, the Ubisoft studio as, yet another marketing and PR guy. Huh. I also have seen him to find his Twitter profile.
Calling Astrid Lindgren a Nazi is like stoning police officers, violating Swedish airspace with nuclear-armed aircraft, invading neighboring countries, begging, social problems in the European Union, and internet companies that do not pay taxes. That is unacceptable.
Now, I know Astrid Lindgren isn't a Nazi, rather she's a very shitty shitlib, but, you know, she wrote a bunch of N-words on that Pippi Longstocking box, and she said really nasty shit like, I'd rather Heil Hitler than have Soviet Sweden.
A Swedish party leader says that he would rather have seen 100 injured perpetrators of violence than 100 injured police officers. Ministers, journalists, and Twitter warriors immediately turn it into a crazy opinion, advocating massacres and the risk of child murder. Go figure, the world is the birch.
Whoa! Okay, Martin, really Jaxie takes on Twitter right there, buddy. Did I tell you that if you don't put this out in the official Discord server, you just pull off the no politics excuse? I know, this is not relevant to Bloodhunt as a whole for now, but please skip this information in your brain pockets just in case. Now, granted, Bloodhunt has been already released as a sneaky early access game, for which you have to disclose on Steam your game is on early access to the public, by the way, and of course, it's free to play. How about we get to play it at a... Oh no, wait, I have to talk about easy anti-cheat. Okay, so let me get this perfectly straight. How come easy anti-cheat is the most widely used anti-cheat in most online multiplayer games? Must be something to it. Game devs, please confirm with this. Is easy anti-cheat that cheap to use? Is it just the best anti-cheat to your eyes? I really need to know. Anyway, easy anti-cheat is the anti-cheat that Bloodhunt uses to defend the game against cheaters, presumably. And let me get one thing straight beforehand. Any free-to-play game is plagued with cheaters, no matter where you look. And surprisingly enough, any anti-cheat can be bypassed by the more clever cheaters somehow. And easy anti-cheat is more evident about this fact because, in the famous words of Seth Sintak, easy anti-cheat is so easy to turn off. Okay, you see what I did there? Penetrating through the anti-cheat system is, according to this unknowncheats.me forum post, as easy as unlinking your Steam account and creating a new Sharkmob account. And surprisingly, in the same forum, there are still Bloodhunt cheats that completely bypass easy anti-cheat. What gives? Well, I'm not saying easy anti-cheat is a bad anti-cheat, but it heavily relies on the grid of use it's been given by each developer. There are devs like those at Epic Games on Fortnite who use the anti-cheat more effectively, and it's still the same easy anti-cheat, but then there are some developers out there who just slap easy anti-cheat on the game and hope the job is taken care of for them automatically without any effort. For instance, it's the case of Battlefield 2042, which makes easy anti-cheat not a very efficient anti-cheat because the developers don't want to bother using it properly. And that makes the whole difference. Aside of the manual replay reporting tools, there's most likely not much that devs such Sharkmob are doing to actively combat cheating, but maybe because they're too busy raking up the cash from the battle pass, and the reporting system depends too much on the manual feedback of players, which can be a hit or miss, but more especially a miss, because devs can't really tell that much if they don't take a minimal effort to look in each and every single report. This just leads to the game being infested with hackers and cheaters, which is clearly evident from the many testimonials made in the Bloodhunt social media like Twitter and the subreddit and so on. And there might be a more nefarious use for easy anti-cheat here at play. Look, I don't want to be particularly accusing easy anti-cheat for being a rootkit tier spyware, but I got some nefarious evidence later. But, you know, the sheer problem mightn't be the only problem Bloodhunt faces, right? Right? This might be the point where some Bloodhunt fanboys will angrily comment and dislike the video. Okay, so first of all, the server maintenance for Bloodhunt is so bad, streamers like Spot Hunters just stopped the grind on Bloodhunt.
Why did I stop the Bloodhunt grind? I mean, I haven't like outright like stopped it, it's just... I'm just stuck on Southeast Asia on fucking laggy servers, you know? Because Osh is dead already. And I've learned as an Australian gamer and streamer in multiplayer that, you know, once that happens, that's it, it's over. Like, I don't know how the fuck they're gonna pull people back.
You can even tell the developers at Sharkmob are not very confident with their own game. Look, I know I don't play ranked at all in here, but if you're openly telling that you hope for the mode's popularity to increase again on Twitter, it really aches me that you're desperate. The fact is, even for the glaring problems that I'm going to mention here in this video and those that I have already mentioned in this video, there's still a subset of over-defensive people in this game who will put tooth and nail into defending this game's reputation. This subset, sadly, is a majority. They will not just kick your ass somehow in the game, but also deflect criticism of the game by either telling you to uninstall the game, or either participating in a toxic masculine gamer dick measuring contest of comparing their KDA to yours on even the game's subreddit, which is, to put it bluntly, not very nice. Not to mention the matchmaking in this game is clearly a problem, at least, which makes the game's learning curve outside of the tutorial mode pretty steep. I'm pretty afraid this is a common problem in a lot of Battle Royale games and plenty of online-only games as well. But it will be ideal to just have a level-based matchmaking system, but even then you won't avoid Smurf accounting there, which still sucks. Overall, this game is a torture to me, and it makes me feel stupid. Unless you take the melee build! Yes, apparently melee in this game is so broken it gives me even the most kills in this game. Because of how the lifesteal of melee makes you nearly invincible before culminating in a diablerie that fills your health back up entirely, this is pretty much an easy way to literally win the game. I'm not kidding. As I'm writing the script of this video, these developers are trying to patch that, but even then they don't barely make the effort of fixing the serious problem of balancing.
Melee has been a hot topic of late, and while we can see that it is not universally agreed upon that melee is too strong, we see a lot of frustration towards it. We want to start by limiting the health you gain back to not make it as difficult to defeat a melee attacker that you nearly killed before they started swinging at you. We'll be monitoring the results closely to see if this is a step in the right direction or if we need to try something different.
Yeah, Sharkmob? Only one slight issue. This means jack shit. Reducing a mere 20% less out of the whopping 50% it previously was is nothing. Like, at least you could remove the lifesteal completely so it encourages people more to just do regular gunfights. But Jimmy, fuck off with that nonsense. You can justify this with a Vampire the Masquerade lore all you want, but with the glaring lore promise that I'm going to tackle later in this video, doesn't mean ape shit, so sit fucking straight. If you're just using such mental gymnastics to justify this, despite the enormous lore issues this game of yours has, it means you're doing something wrong. Oh, and you know what else you're doing wrong, Sharkmob? This game is optimized like poo. AAA games have quite a tendency of using uncompressed WAV files for audio for that maximum quality shit, even though you can still keep the high quality with compressed Boris audio files. And here we got the same glaring problem because the game weighs a whopping 16 gigabytes by the time I'm writing this video. You're even telling me the game is so high quality when the gameplay level here, even with me playing on an SSD, even with me playing in a midway between minimal and recommended specs, even on lower graphic settings, it buffers loading mid-game like in PUBG for Xbox One. You know, all that level of detail of level model shit when they're not loading properly in mid-game, and this can lead to make them again barely unplayable. This is pretty annoying, especially because if this happens and you're just basically playing like normal, you can't even climb walls properly or jump, which makes you an easy target. Well, JMAA, why did you just get a better PC? Well then, how about you give me more money, jackass? The sad tendency of game devs is optimizing the game's graphics for high quality graphics in high-end PCs and not so much for mid or low-end PCs or low graphic settings. It's too bad of a bummer. It's not just a sign that developers don't care about the huge disparities between the rich and the poor in terms of PC gaming, and I know they still want to suck up to the Chinese market, which need I remind you that it's nearly entirely full of poor people who cannot afford buying new games and stick all day to free-to-play games, but also saying that they don't just want to bother with the game at all and instead focus on sucking up your money with their Battle Pass crap. And if you think the Battle Pass crap is bad, take a gander at what I'm going to uncover here next. You can easily think like I do that a Battle Pass crop is yet another way to exploit the neurodivergent with a FOMO stuff to extract money that people cannot spend, but that's the least of the whole problems that Sharkmob is indulging itself into. Yeah, the game's store is filled with cosmetics, and you can say, but damn it's just cosmetics! Even then, I can still say that the whole psychology behind this game is sucking up on unsuspecting, neurodivergent and vulnerable players with Battle Pass FOMO crap is clearly evident and malicious at worst. You know what I mean? You don't need me to say this. Gem Stephanie Sterling and Laura K. Boss say it best in their videos. And this is sad for a AAA game company to do this because they don't even bother with making a good game first. It's just another Battle Royale game with a Vampire the Masquerade license slapped into it. But you wanna know what's really bad? Oh, I'll tell you what's really bad. First, the company behind the game, Sharkmob, in their Bloodhunt social media, claim they have donated $42,000 to save the children from raising funds to a charity event. You know, Save the Children, the same NGO that's well known for having an executive sexually harassing women and other people on the staff.
Today sees the publication of a devastating report into one of Britain's best known charities, Save the Children UK. The report is by the Charity Commission, which is the charity regulator, and it's an investigation into how the charity completely mishandled allegations of sexual harassment and bullying against two of the charity's senior executives, its former chief executive, Justin Forsyth, and his deputy, Brendan Cox, who was the widower of Joe Cox, the Labour MP who was murdered in 2016. They were accused of the most appalling sexual harassment and bullying of women employees. The whole thing was covered up for years. I've been covering this story myself for 5 years, and this is the culmination of all that. And the man in the firing line today is the current chief executive, Kevin Watkins, because as the Charity Commission report goes out of its way to make clear, Mr. Watkins was a trustee of the charity when the whole thing was swept under the carpet. And in my opinion, there is no question Kevin Watkins should resign immediately.
Oh boy, I don't want to think Sharkmob is funding a charity run by abusers and sexual harassers. I just want to think this is just a poor, misguided choice of charity for Sharkmob, because otherwise shit's really fucking stinking. And let me point that they don't even respond me to this by the time I'm writing this, and that if you barely point this out or anything similar in their Discord server, they just whip out their no politics rule. Classy. At this point, with the severe violations of trans, LGBT, and human rights that happen in the US and in the rest of the Western world, I can assume they will keep being silent about it while being complicit in such violations of human rights. Nasty cowardly. Okay, a little pause for the video to clarify a single thing. Martin Hultberg seems to confirm me through Discord that they were completely unaware of the Save the Children scandal when they picked that charity, so it seems to just confirm it. This is just a poor, misguided choice of charity on the part of Sharkmob. Still, I think they should have done a bit more extensive research before picking that charity. Generally speaking, private corporate charities like Save the Children or Doctors Without Borders tend to have a good bunch of skeletons in a closet, I'm just saying. And I can guess that these types of PR events are the main reason why the game's patches are so slow to release, and especially the balancing ones, because they don't even bother to make it a good game before sucking up money from vulnerable victims through their FOMO Battle Pass shit. Here, remember when I said Tencent owns Sharkmob now? Well, don't even get me started on what this means. Tencent also does business on the surveillance systems like that of WeChat in China to censor content that goes against the Chinese Communist Party. Let me say it again. Tankies are shit. Tankies are shit. Say it. Tankies are shit. Tencent also contributed in the creation of the social credit system in China, which is a powerful repression and censorship tool for the Chinese Communist Party. Tankies are shit. And you might be asking, why is this relevant to Bloodhunt at all? Well, it's no wonder why this surveillance is also prevalent in Bloodhunt. Apparently, Bloodhunt's easy anti-cheat contains a piece of spyware service called Anti-Cheat Expert Service, which might lead into Tencent's own Anti-Cheat Expert, which actually proves it's a rootkit spyware. According to the Tencent Anti-Cheat Expert website, this service reads things like your system boot time and whether it is root or simulator running. I can't imagine what kind of security vulnerability problems this can lead to the end user, the poor side who just wants to play Bloodhunt. This only begs a question. If easy anti-cheat is so effective in Bloodhunt in banning cheaters, and yet cheaters and hackers can still bypass and hoard the anti-cheat system, why keep it? Well, it might assume that, like in the case of our good old friend Red Shell, it is only used to read analytics from our players, and that can lead to a lot of problems, not only for cybersecurity issues, but also considering Tencent has contributed to the repression and censorship of Chinese citizens for whatever it means for the players' political security. Again, China is a country that loves spying on the United States and all the superpowers, like Israel and Russia does on their governments. That's a whole cyber warfare I don't want to tackle too far in this video, because otherwise I wouldn't be talking too much about Bloodhunt in particular. But you know what's worse? Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Let's admit, ever since I started playing Bloodhunt with a bad taste in my mouth, I suddenly became more invested in the general World of Darkness stuff, more precisely on Vampire the Masquerade, and more specifically the tabletop RPG. And you know what? That even makes things worse for this video game. Now that I have a basic grasp of how the lore of Vampire the Masquerade goes, I can see even more incongruences in the lore of Bloodhunt, and boy, if I exhaustively name every single one of them, I had a century-long video. Let's mention a few because quite frankly, these are the most egregious. The first problem starts with the very title of the game, Bloodhunt. A bloodhunt in Vampire the Masquerade, or in the Camarilla, is a form of capital punishment from the Camarilla, which basically boils down to a summary execution and hunt down of whoever committed a capital crime in the Camarilla, like in slaying a fellow kindred, diableries, or even breaching the very masquerade, which gives the existence of vampires themselves a secret to mortal society. You can tell this ain't just a Battle Royale game where people kill each other for a prize. This isn't fucking Squid Game. In the game, you can commit a diablerie to refill your full health and finish off an opponent after you down them. The many problems this means for a vampire lore are evident. You have to first take in mind that committing a diablerie on so lightly on random vampires is illegal under the Camarilla, unless you got explicit permission from your prince or elder, or you're just another anarch. Regardless, it just says in the very traditions of the Camarilla, "Thou art forbidden to destroy another of thy kind. The right to destruction belongeth only to thine elder. Only the eldest among thee shall call the Bloodhunt." It's literally the 6th tradition of the Camarilla. Speaking of the Camarilla traditions, it's especially baffling how you feel on other mortals in game. You just basically feel on mortals in Bloodhunt to gain a stats power up. You know, very gamey stuff. And breaching the Masquerade in this game is just barely a way to get yourself revealed in the game's map for 60 seconds. First of all, feeding on random mortals like that, or even embracing them like this out of nowhere as a means to power up your stats in the game, is quite a problem in the traditions of the Camarilla, especially because this has its own ramifications where, oh boy, don't even get me started on this. Like, for instance, if you feed on someone who's got a melancholic blood resonance, you have emotional effects of such blood resonance, so you'll eventually turn into an emotional train wreck. And don't even get me started on possibly accidentally embracing mortals like this, which is illegal to just randomly create new progenies like this without your elder's permission. The game could explore these concepts a little bit more so it affects more deeply into the gameplay, but again, the devs didn't just want to bother and just wanted to ape Epic's Legions again. Even if you feed on someone who's on drugs, you have the effects of said drugs on you. There's so much wasted potential in the blood resonance system on this game. It's just sad. It's literally been stripped down to just a power-up mechanic in this game. And this also happens when you breach the Masquerade in game, which again has been stripped down to a radar reveal mechanic for an X amount of seconds before being automatically forgiven. This is a problem in the actual vampire lore, because there, if you breach the Masquerade, you're basically done for. You're pretty much dead and executed, even kicked out of the Camarilla for doing this. And none of the Anarchs want to have anything to do with you if you breach the Masquerade like this. And even the Anarchs hate the rest of the Camarilla traditions. The actual lore of the game is just relegated to a long list of text reads in the game's menu, which you can unlock, yet nobody will ever bother to fucking read by themselves. And it just seems sad, because this might be just a lazy attempt for Sharkmob to slap the Vampire the Masquerade and World of Darkness license into yet another generic Battle Royale game. The rulebook for Vampire the Masquerade, the 5th edition one, costed me around $50. It might not be cheap for mere mortals like me, but for a company like, I don't know, a Sharkmob or Tencent with at least hundreds of thousands of dollars in their banks, or even millions, they could afford easily a truckload of these books. How the hell do they not just take a smidge of research into the source material like this? How will the Bloodhunt community find any of this? I'm pretty sure that by now a good bunch of Bloodhunt fanboys will just dislike and comment this video by the time I'm saying this, and like I mentioned, there's an incredible subset of people in that community who will defend, cope and excuse any problem that the game faces, regardless of what it is. Regarding the problem of melee being literally broken, like I said, there's a certain people there who will just tell you to just use movement, bro. And I already proven through the video's game footage and with other testimonies that you can't use the movement here. And even then, telling someone about a huge problem in the game's code or gameplay to just get good just exacerbates the problem even more. It doesn't even attempt at solving it. Another kind of fanboy criticism that I faced during my prior criticism of the game is to just uninstall the game. I am only one person that to hypothetically uninstall the game, compared to the rest of mere mortals who still play the game and pay for it, which doesn't even mean jack shit to the developers, despite more people like me leading the game to its inevitable decline by just uninstalling the game. I don't have to mention again the whole psychology of cosmetic items in the battle pass and what it implies to neurodivergent and vulnerable players there, but will anybody in the right mind defend that? These business practices are exacerbated by people keeping supporting the game in droves, And I know there's still that subset of people who will not just defend the game wholeheartedly, but also vote positively their shitty business decisions with their wallets. And we've already seen prior to this that what remains of this game's fanbase is just that, a gigantic cope. It's no surprise the game is on constant decline lately, and not just judging by the Steam charts on the game itself. The game's popularity is struggling with getting Twitter engagement, the game's player base is diminishing slowly, and they pretty much struggle with platforms like Twitch too. The latest uploads on YouTube also struggle to get a decent views to subs ratio, and this is mainly because of the discontent of players like me towards the game itself, which the developers have been nearly ignoring on. The only praise that the game gets is through the game's Steam page, with all the Morbius memes going on and positive reviews of the game, and pretty much the game shares a similar fate to that of Morbius. Both are unsuccessful but make for really interesting meme material, at least ironic one, at least if it's consumed for free. But like any memes, the memes and their presence have a finite life expectancy, and they will be forgotten in time. Sony had put Morbius in theaters the second time because of how many people meme about the movie originally. I just need to look at the box office earnings of the second theater airing to get an idea of where this goes. And pretty much like Morbius and its coming sequel, the devs of Sharkmob will only seem to try to continue Bloodhunt and try desperately to extend its life cycle, but it will be to no avail, and it will fail worse than before. Like the Milkmaid's Tale, Bloodhunt has huge expectations and aspirations to become another great video game in the gaming scene, and dream perhaps too big, but through Sharkmob's mistakes and mishandling of the game itself, and even not bothering to make a proper game first, they tripped over the most minimal mistake. It fell off and crashed, spoiling any huge aspirations this game had. The game is cursed to be soon forgotten, like the oh so many AAA games before in the same graveyard, and there's already a hollow grave ready for this game. And if I were honest, if I were you, I'd just stick to the tabletop RPG for Vampire the Masquerade instead, or at least Bloodlines.